Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Steve Butz is
Hi,
my
Steve.
name.
Hi,
It's a
Steve.
pleasure to meet you, Paul, to come back and be with you. My wife Angie is here with me, and 45 years that we met in high school at Bishop DeBerg High School in a play in 1975. And so that's a lot of years she's put up with me. So notes on the talk, and yes, I did take notes. And if I exaggerate, I won't lie, but if I exaggerate or use too much hyperbole, I'll look right here and say, no, that isn't quite true. It's almost true. It isn't quite true. You know, when Paul first asked me to talk, I didn't know what was, what the group was like or anything, and so this is just a little crazy social media story. So you probably had these goofy things happen to you on Facebook and something just pops up. So the last 3 days, I've been thinking about this topic that he gave me, politics and Christianity. And I was like, it just doesn't sound like the best of topics, All Saints Day, and, I'm like, really, Advent's almost here. But so I've been praying, and I'm a big C.S. Lewis fan, have been for really my whole life since I was about 15 or 16 when I first read Mere Christianity. But that being said, I look up some quotes from Lewis because I want to incorporate that, a little bit of the founding fathers, etc. But I'm thinking about Paul, to be honest with you. Just thinking about Paul and all the great talks I've heard him give, and he's a gifted speaker, and all the way from stuff we've done together to when he's done school stuff with kids of ours and probably grandkids of ours now at this point. And I was just like, well, how would Paul do this? No, in all seriousness. So I'm praying this morning, which we like to do every morning. And I'm done looking up my C.S. Lewis quotes the last 3 days, and I'm just checking my phone. And I didn't know the goodness of God. I only know C.C. Winans. And I'm like, great rendition. I'm going to add that at St. Stephen's. But we listened to that song quite a bit. And so I'm listening to some John Michael Talbot, and then I'm ready to move on and start my day. So the first thing, I'm just checking Facebook for just a minute. The first thing that pops up is Brandon. So it's just crazy that he pops up, who is our neighbor, and just happens to be here on a retreat. So stuff just happens. But it was a little crazy because I'm on Facebook, and the first reel that pops up is Paul Masick here giving a talk on the rosary. And I'm like, I'm not, how sometimes you think your phone is always listening, and I'm like, no, haven't talked to my phone, haven't looked up anything on my phone about this place, not even the address I haven't looked up yet. And I'm like, well, it's either weird with Siri or this is a little gift from God. And I'm taking it. It was a gift from God because, yes, I was nervous. And I'm like, no, there's Paul standing at this small podium. And I thought, okay, I'll see the place when I get there. That was my little fun fact on that. If you have to give a talk on Christianity and politics, and I forget which way you put them, but I'm going to say for sure we're going to refer to it as Christianity and politics, because Christianity, as the true definition that I would say most simply, all of us attempting to follow Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior in our lives, is infinitely more important than anything we could do in politics. I will define politics as basically, for this little moment right here, what I have learned in terms of how we work together in a legislature and as citizen voters to accomplish what should be basic, common, good stuff that has to be done. We have to run schools and build roads and do healthcare and 10,000 other things that we need to do. But, as we all know, especially at our age, I would say that it has become incredibly divisive. And we have this huge fissure, I'm just going to say, politically speaking, between two parties, and I'm 66 years old. So if you are 66 years old and you've lived your entire life in South St. Louis, and you went to St. George, and then St. Stephen's, then Bishop DeBerg, and you met a girl from Sorrows, and you lived within, and we have lived within 3 square miles our entire 66 years. And the world that we grew up in, everybody played CYC sports, everybody went to Stevens or Soros or Immaculate Heart, and even that was a little bit of a dividing line. No, sorry, they're from Immaculate Heart. So, it was just, I only bring them up because we're a merged parish now, and I marvel at how hard that is to do. And I'm like, okay, we only live 0.6 of a mile. We had 3 churches within 1.2 miles. But that was the world I grew up in. And it was the only world I knew. And I'm not saying it was simple. I'm just saying that was my world. I'm the oldest of 11 kids. If you're the oldest of 11 kids, married to your high school sweetheart, have 6 kids, 10 grandkids, people say, oh, you must be Catholic. And you get tired of saying, yes. So you just say, no, passionate Baptists. And if you say passionate Baptist and they're actually listening, they're like, I didn't know, I get it, So I said, no, we're Catholic. So I just want to give a little bit of that worldview, I guess I'll say, that I came from. And it was a small world, but it was a wonderful world. I will say that. You get a little older, I went to UMSL, we both did, and you're going to get out and expand. You've experienced that with your kids, you're going to experience it with your kids, you're going to experience it with your kids, and the rest of us have experienced it with our kids. So much so that I remember my grandmother, God bless her soul, 40 plus years ago, almost panicking that one of my brothers was going to marry a Lutheran. And I remember thinking, I get where you're coming from, Grandma, but I can assure you the Lutheran grandma is saying, dear God, I'm so worried that my granddaughter is going to marry this Catholic kid. You come forward to 2025 and you got kids that are 28 or 30, you're like, thank God they're a Christian. I just want them to have a relationship with Jesus and we'll work on everything else later. So your point of view changes as the world has changed. Something that I see going on currently, about 8 years ago, I've been in the state legislature. So I'm a state rep. There's 163 of them in the state. Each one has about 37,000 constituents. I have the smallest geographic district in the state. Dutchtown down to the Patch, Bevo over to Broadway. Dutchtown is the state's densest neighborhood, so just in that neighborhood is one reason why my district is so small. St. Anthony of Padua is right in the middle of it and was our parish for many, many, many years, and a place we still hold dear. When I first got to Jeff City, I used to think in terms of, liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. After 7 years there, I've come down to, I only really think in terms of competent, incompetent, empathetic, and an ability to love, or a complete jerk. And everything else kind of can work out. So I have experienced people that I thought are outrageously liberal, way more liberal than I would ever be. But they got a heart of gold, they work hard, and they try to listen, and they like you to listen to them. And I'm like, you can work with that. In politics, at least, and this is kind of true in life, somebody that knows everything, and everything is so black and white and so perfect, and they can just name their 4 bullet points. It doesn't matter what you say back. So in politics, this is the politics side now, there has to be that dialogue. And as much as, to be honest, sometimes I look back and say, man, I wish it was 1967 again in South St. Louis. It is never going to be 1967 again in South St. Louis. Never again. That doesn't mean that was better, this is worse. I'd say some things are better. Some things are worse, there's no doubt. I just think it's important to say life is not that static and you have to move on. And I have also found in parenting and in marriage and in work and for sure in the legislature, life is not that simple. So with my own adult kids, maybe starting from, we're sharing a few grandkid pictures over there, and there comes a certain age, pick that age, it's 15, 17, 19, somewhere in this range, that the relationship that was so sweet and everything you did was great, and yes, we just want to go to the softball game and let's go to the Cardinals game, is I got to work, Grandpa, or I got to work, Dad, I'm busy, I'm out with my friends, whatever. That life changes also. And you just have to say, God, I'm giving you this situation throughout. But my point is, even with the people you love the dearest, at least this is our lived experience, my siblings, some of our kids, they have chosen and they do stuff we don't think is the way they should be going. Yet, you still gotta love them. You still have to love them. And in many cases, it's been my lived experience. And they love me back. Even though they're like, yeah, Dad, I don't think that way anymore. But, I just want you to know I still love you. And I'm like, that goes a long way. If we would get to that spot in politics where you could say that kind of compromise, saying, I can't go where you're going right now. I don't think I'm ever going to go where you're going. But I can still love and respect you. And at the end of the day, we're going to vote. Now, this whole democracy thing, little quote I got for you from C.S. Lewis that I didn't print out, but I know it well enough. Lewis says, most people believe in democracy because they believe in the goodness of man, ever increasingly better, to an ever more perfect society. Lewis said, I believe in democracy because of the fall of man, and that no one man, no one woman, because of their corrupt nature, eventually, as either a dictator or a king, is going to be unworthy of governing the people. So we divide that responsibility. In America today, one of my favorite quotes that I think we can think back a little bit with Ben Franklin, I'm sure it's pretty famous, when they finally finalized the Constitution. It's around 1789, I think. Supposedly, you never know what exactly is hyperbole exactly, because I'm like, did this really happen? But it makes a lot of sense. Some woman comes up to Franklin in Philadelphia. Mr. Franklin, what sort of government have you given us? A republic, madam, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. For me to say that these are the worst times America's ever lived through, that's hyperbole. I'm not going there. I'm like, I hear that a lot, and I'm like, okay. I'm just kind of saying that recession from 80 to 82, I got out of college in 1980. Yeah, that was a rough couple of years. And that was nothing compared to the Great Depression. If you were of a certain age, my grandparents' age, you get to live through World War I. Then you become an adult during the Depression. Then you get to go fight World War II. And then you come back and rebuild the free world. And somehow they did it. That's why we call them the greatest generation. So I'm like, yeah, the Civil War, the Great Depression, World War II, worse than what we're going through now. Absolutely, positively. But we have to face what we're going through. If we have enough fortitude to think, I have a part to play. And the one thing that I think we're losing, and that is people no longer believing that they do have a part to play. Today is election day, a relatively minor election day, but there's three important elections going on in Virginia and a couple other places. But we will average about 17% voter participation today. We're going to have a pretty darn big important election in 2026. We might, in the primaries, might touch 25% voter turnout. That's it. In the general, we might touch 45. If you do a little deep dive into it, you think, is that just a uniquely American problem? It is not. We vote at about the same percentage as every other Western democracy in the world. There's a couple exceptions. Australia, notable. They voted a much higher percentage because they have mandatory voting and like a $500 fine if you don't vote on your second one. But they have about half of all their votes are like for Elmer Fudd, Donald Duck. So they're not really voting. It's a protest vote, right? You can say, all right, I voted. I voted for Donald Duck. So if you're in politics like myself, this is my 8th year, as I said, you say, what can I do? And that kind of goes to this competency thing and empathy. Part of it is, at the very local level, which is the only, outside of Jeff City, I can't think beyond much to national politics. I vote, I pay some attention to, but between the city of St. Louis County, and Jeff City, that's enough in my capacity. But when I ran, I'd always been interested in politics. My mom stuck it in me when I was 2, and she kept feeding it for a lot of years. When our youngest of 6 was finally away at school, I was like, I'm in a good place where I could run. I think it was a way of me just saying, I want to give back, and the city of St. Louis, I felt very strongly, needed a strong, reasonable voice in Jeff City, and that's what I've endeavored to do. There is about a third of all the politicians I've met, I would say, are like that. They are true public servants, both sides of the aisle, that want to give back to their community to do the best job they can do. Almost all of them are competent. Almost all of them make a sacrifice to do so. Then there's about a third who have literally nothing else better to do. Almost very little, I was going to say something a little too strong, I'll say very little in terms of qualifications or lived experience. And they come to Jeff City, or they serve on the Board of Aldermen in my world, and they're bringing nothing. They're bringing nothing for the equation. And I'm like, boy, oh boy, that's a tough third. And then there's a third that are the ones I think you really have to look out for. These are the ones that have an agenda. They most definitely are trying to build a career, I think, in the wrong way, and getting ahead, saying whatever needs to be said in front of whatever audience needs to be said to get a vote. So it's about a third. I think the goal, for me at least, is to be a loud voice for the first group and try to help mentor those in the second group. In your lives, I'll just say this is how you can help in that phase. If you know someone that has a little bit of some leadership skills and either a point in their life, young or older, this is a tough gig if you're between 30 and 55 because you got to make a living. And at the local and state level, you are not going to make a living in politics. So get behind them, help them, pray for them, encourage them, get more involved. My hope is that we can just get more Catholic people, more Lutheran people, more people that have said, the culture wars have driven me crazy, and I'm just pulling back. I would say, if you could set the culture wars and that craziness aside, the vast majority of politics, the vast majority of governance has nothing to do with it. And it has everything to do with tornado recovery and rebuilding Highway 70 and proper funding for schools and why should teachers be paid so poorly and healthcare needs. I mean, it's stuff that you're like, it's not a culture war. There's some differences, like, how much should we give here? And there's always budget constraints and budget working. But if you kind of look at it that way, I think you could say, I got some hope. The Christianity part, we need Christians involved in politics and governance. We simply do. And when certain votes come up, whether it is a massive bill that has a couple of, I'll just say, pro-life pieces in it, but some not so traditionally pro-life pieces in it, and it's an 80% good bill, and you read just one part of the story, before talk to people that do the vote, and they will say, it's true. I had to vote. I liked 80% of this bill, 20% I didn't. I don't like it. I can live with it a little bit, and at least get as involved and as informed on an issue like that as you can before you just become, a warrior on the internet and call people up and be crazy. So I think that would be great. Praying is critically important. We do have prayer every day. We got this Monsignor Kowecki. He is a great guy in Jeff City. He's phenomenal. He's at St. Peter's, the parish that's right there. He brings a lot of love, joy, good, solid prayer. But we've had this division in Christianity between Democrats and Republicans. One dear sweet from Kansas City, 100% Christian lady. She's about a sophomore now, but her freshman year, she says to me, "Why do they think none of us Democrats are Christians?" That's how politicized Christianity became. And I said, it's not that. They just don't understand. You have to go explain to them your faith. And when it's time for someone in the legislature to offer a prayer, I'm always trying to lead the charge with some Democrats. We should be the ones also offering a prayer. And don't just say, hey, that's their turf. It's just something I'm like, that's a good compromise point. And I think you'll find all kinds of people are there with you. No matter how you look at, make sure I do anything, yeah, compromise, blah, blah, blah. You have to do some compromising. Some people can't live with that. If you cannot live with any kind of compromise, yeah, you don't belong in an elected office. You're never, ever, ever going to make it. What I was just trying to say is hold a little grace for those, because it's tough to find any kind of balance. And for as strong as you will believe something, as strong as I believe something, there's about another 40% of the electorate that doesn't believe it either. So, and it's my experience, we do hear from the extremes 100 times more than I hear from what I always think is the 70% in the middle. And I'm always like, well, the 70% in the middle, they're too busy teaching, going to school, running soccer camps, doing this. I'm like, to me, this is just what I see. Christianity is our faith, following Jesus is our faith. There's a lot of people that have lost all faith, and politics has become their religion. So they treat it like a religion. And I'm like, I know they're gonna find themselves disappointed, and when enough time passes by. Been to 4 really great funerals in the last 2 weeks, very appropriate for All Souls Day. All 4 great, devout Christian people, lived full, long lives. And you say, if you're looking at their lives, they were all well into their late 80s, early 90s. So a long, full life, surrounded by their kids, always served God faithfully. And you're like, I hope that's the way I am. That is the way I hope that all of us are. I was reading in Ecclesiastes, a book that I don't read as much as all the other books, just to be honest, but the very end of Ecclesiastes says this, Ecclesiastes chapter 12. After you've heard everything, which made me think, hey, when you're in Jeff City and the yakking's been going on for like 9.5 hours, and you've heard everything there is to be said on the subject, fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's final duty. And I thought, that is how I wanted to end this little talk on Christianity and politics. So that's all I had for you.